and it is in the name of weaponization of this Kashmiri Pandit identity, the Kashmiri Hindu identity, that a lot of this is legitimized and consent for what is happening is created within India. So let me begin, and I shall speak fast because I normally do, but also because I have a lot to say and there's little time, but it's recorded. So I would like to begin by saying, the thing is, I have been given this task of creating some hope. So let me start with a cliche that never doubt the power of a small group of committed people to make real change. Because look at what the RSS has done today to India. It happens, right? The RSS is the ideological parent of the BJP and was founded in 1925. Now, the other thing, and I will respond to some of the points that I've heard, and as we get here, I'm agreeing more and more with people before me. So the thing, what has happened is, of course, a change of frame. It's a change of agendas. It's not just, there was a chessboard when it came to Kashmir, and the positions were locked and entrenched. Instead of trying to change those positions, the whole chessboard has been torn. So that doesn't mean that we have anything good. It means we have a new chessboard and it will settle with new entrenched positions. So perhaps we can try and make sure that not all of that is as disastrous as it has been. But we must remember that when it comes to Kashmir, facts are value-laden. Every narrative on Kashmir is landmined with vested interests, of the different kinds of Kashmiri identities. So that does mean that what we learn and think about Kashmir depends on at which point we start telling that history. And in this, neither Britain nor India nor Pakistan have any high moral ground. But of course, at present, we are talking about this, the horrendous right-wing project in India. Now, Meghna Lord Desai started out by saying that in the manifesto they had always said they would do this. True, they did. But what is their rationale for doing so, apart from the merely emotive aspect of it? If the rationale is the fact that they have the support of the people, then that support isn't based on an adequate understanding of Kashmiri history or of Kashmiri identity. So in effect, if we judge on the basis of support, then India has a very strong case for a very weak cause. Because, it's, yes, you have support, but for what? And on the basis of what? The idea about, John mentioned, I wasn't aware, the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is also ours. Well, that's part of the Akhand Bharat agenda of BJP RSS. The idea that there is a greater India and all of the neighboring countries are actually at some point going to be incorporated into that greater undivided India as it was. And like many other regressive, reactionary, right-wing projects, it seeks to return to a pre-colonial purity in the worst manner possible. Also, and I will point out that the Indian Chief of Army in 2017, post the incident where a Kashmiri civilian was used as human shield, said publicly that he would rather that Kashmiri protesters use guns and not stones, because then it would be easier to kill them and fire at them. It's a story also covered by international press, including The Guardian. So what this recent move has done is to deliberately try and eliminate any grey areas and to provoke an increase of violence at a time of their choosing so that they can deal with it in the way that to completely crush Kashmiris. Kashmir is an unfinished project of two kinds of competing Indian nationalisms, and that right-wing Indian nationalism, which has ever more become prominent, is of course positions itself against a secular democratic narrative. There are many Kashmirs, I should also tell you that, and many Kashmiris, by which I mean that there are many imaginaries of Kashmir. It is, as a region, as the entire region, it has different religions, different regions, different identities. And Tahir's point about creating a narrative, it can be done, certainly processes leading up to the Northern Ireland Good Friday Agreement were an effort. So it can be done, but it's important to focus also on the fact that there are these different narratives and we cannot actually move towards anything better unless we take that difference into account, because if we don't, then the right-wing project just uses the resentments of one against the other, combines them with the Hindutva agenda and says, oh well, we're doing it for the benefit of this people in these other region or the people of this other identity. So it's important for us to focus on that. Kashmir has been a long-standing victim of imperial cartography first, and then of post-colonial securitizations, faced with non-linear cycles of violence every few years, with the predictability, you have these enormous, horrific numbers of deaths of people. I do think that it is also important not to use gender in any loose way here, because let's remember that the Naya Kashmir Manifesto, the New Kashmir Manifesto in the 40s was a very progressive document when it came to gender. So this idea that somehow we're going to liberate their women is just basically nonsense. The question about it's not just post-colonial states that are obsessed with territoriality. I think it's the peculiar combination of that hyphen between nation and state. Kashmir is a nation. It is not a nation that has a state of its own. So that hyphenation, I think, dates back to the problems of sovereignty. And, this isn't an academic talk, but we could go into that whole story about, the forms of sovereignty and nationalism that come to be instantiated at the point of decolonization. So that's a different story. Also, not everything was settled in 53. There was the 57 Constitution. Yes, what has happened now has changed the constitutional and legal landscape, is an attempt to do that, but it is more complex than some simplistic narratives would narrate. The shutdown is not for the first time, but it is unprecedented in the way in which the collective punishment has sought to be justified in a completely blasé manner. We're going to do it because we can. Literally, it comes down to that kind of bullying tactics. Now, if the choice is between development and freedom, and here I pause because I want you to really reflect and understand that. It's true for any context. If the choice is between development and freedom, I also want to look straight at the camera and say this, then that is the standard script of colonialism. Who says you can have development or you can have freedom? Nobody that does not subscribe to a colonial ideology gives people that choice. Add to which, as Andrew pointed out, yes, there is the crucial issue of consent here. People's consent. You cannot claim to act in any democratic manner if you have absolutely no consent of people who you put under collective punishment. And the arbitrariness of the way in which power is exercised is emphatically, that arbitrariness is also emphatically colonial in the way in which it has been carried out. There have been these emergency powers legislation, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, Public Safety Act, that have been there for decades now. And now there will be other security acts that will also be available to be used in Kashmir. So it's also done that. I think that it is important for us, in order to retain some measure of hope in a very hopeless situation, to think about the urgent and the important both. By which I mean the short-run situation of what is happening, the misery, and how best to mitigate that and keep raising our voice to mitigate that, but also the longer-run situation of what is important in the long run, to make sure that these narratives do not, this kind of narrative does not settle with any clarity, with any ease. It is important to find ways of moving forward, and I think that is where our role, as maybe not even as states may have their strategic interests, but people do have, if national interests are even remotely constructed, and not merely reflected by the actors of the state, then we have a role as citizens wherever we are in trying to make some kind of an intervention into this, albeit in very small ways. So I think I would like to end by just saying, am I good to end, or do I have more time? If I have more, because this is all that I scribbled just now. I actually have.
I'm not going to take a vote because I'm sure they say carry on. But,
all right,
but
sure.
Good to
so okay. So so since it does say poet there, I want to quote with a line from Faiz, a poet who was in Kashmir and was Kashmiri himself. Lazim hai ki hum bhi dekhenge. The days of zulm, the days of oppression will end one day. All tyrannies, no tyrannies last forever. Yes, right now it does seem very relentless, but I want to believe that there is some hope, in spite of the fact that I agree with what many of the speakers before me have said.